Hello everyone and welcome back to the Empty Space Inbetween podcast, episode 26. We're moving past, we're storming the episode numbers in.
I know, taking over a lot of podcasts, man.
We're taking over with numbers anyway. And we just passed as well 500 views as well. Past 500 views, which is a big milestone for us because we didn't think, we thought there was a gap in the market, but we didn't really know, did we?
No.
So it's nice to see that people are actually listening and enjoying it. So thank you all.
I think the first podcast we got like minus 20 views.
yeah, everyone told us they hated us and we all stunk. You stink! But yeah, so episode 26, again, we're rolling with another guest.
I've said, man,
We are rolling with another guest. So thank you very much for coming on, Dr Chris Cavanagh. Thank you very much. How are we?
Not too bad.
It makes me laugh. So, like, behind the curtain, we've already had like an hour introduction before we've even started recording. But yeah, so we'll just roll right into it then because we've been speaking. So we know you as, well, this is how we were introduced. You are the fiance of one of the crowd favourites, Dr. Anya McDermott. So that's how we were introduced. I'm going to send her that clip. So that's how we were introduced. But you are a researcher in, is it archaeology, ancient history?
Ancient history and archaeology.
So that's how we know you. How would you describe yourself to somebody who was like, who is Chris Cavanagh?
Who is Chris Cavanagh?
Dr. Chris Cavanagh?
I had Malter. No, I
in 2 hours.
My work sort of involves. I love all history, but if you had to, force me, I'd say in the ancient world, the way people live their lives, not only like in terms of like going to war and stuff like that, which is something a lot of people are naturally interested in, but even the clothes they wore, the customs, even things as simple as like a handshake to us today, something like that interests me. And religion is a really big one for me, like customs and how much that's changed over time, and it also just understanding like the differences between modernity and the ancient world. So like a lot of my research at the minute is focused on a particular cult. And a cult of, she's called the Magna Mater, literally means the Big Ma or the Great Mother in Latin. And she had a very interesting group of followers, these priests called the Galli. Galli, like the word Gaul, like France Gallic. But the Galli, if you were a Gallus priest, you had to be born a sexed male, so you had to have male genitals and all that. And you had to on what's called the Dies Sanguinis, so the Day of Blood, bit of a giveaway. You worked yourself up into an ecstatic frenzy, and then you castrated yourself without any anesthetic or anything. You just did the thing yourself, either with a sharp stone or a piece of pottery or a knife, depending on who you ask.
Gotta say, Chris, that's the maddest intro ever.
That is crazy.
we got into Chris Cavanagh chopping dicks off.
Yeah, Chris so I'm really interested in like handshakes and how people chop the dicks off.
That was a quick intro. That was the best intro
I was about to say, so like
that escalated quickly.
It did escalate quickly. So like with all, I guess like we like to break the ice, but I feel we're already there. We'll go ahead with it anyway. So what we do when we have guests on, we like to ask three highbrow questions, and we need to stop saying them highbrow.
They're very highbrow.
They're very lowbrow.
They're not lowbrow, man.
We'll let you decide because the first one is, what is your favourite sandwich? Highbrow, told you.
I tell you what, actually, and it's weird because I can only get it here. You know your cheddar plough-mans that you lads do?
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. I don't know why. Back home, you don't really get them. Back home, I mean, like Northern Ireland. But over here, just when I'm in, I don't know, most recently when we were at the airport there, I says to Anya, I was like, oh, fuck, they do cheddar plough-mans here. I don't know why, but it's
just like a Branston pickle with a thick
cheddar. That's it, just pickle and cheese. And just like, it's so simple, but fuck me, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, good.
Don't give them sandwiches in Northern Ireland.
They don't do cheddar. Well, it's not that common. They don't really do cheddar plough-mans over there. But when I was doing archaeology, like a lot of my digs or something, you'd fuck off to the local whatever shop or garage they had, and they always had cheddar plough-mans, and I'd have that for my lunch every day. And it's
nice.
It's a nice sandwich, like
satisfying cheddar as well on a cracker with Branston pickle in your mouth.
Oh,
it is nice. Satisfying, isn't it?
I'd take that.
The one thing as well is that unfortunately I have a bit of a disclaimer. Vegetarian. I know. Sorry, nobody's perfect.
It's over. End the podcast. It's all over.
Well, the Anya, who you met before, I think what was hers, a ham sandwich or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
I fucking bland.
Yeah, because Anya, some rejogging my memory now. Anya said she was dead fussy.
Oh God, yeah.
And that's why she picked up Lance, and we were looking at her like, no, surely
no. Don't she told yes. She has a real hatred of lettuce. She says it has a smell and a taste. I'm like, okay, there's a taste, but a fucking smell. And she's like, oh, I know it smells.
Literally just crunchy water.
That's literally crunchy
water.
Any sandwich is uplifted by fresh lettuce, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why she we had a Subway a couple of weeks back, and she's like, I could literally, I could smell it off you, and I'm like, what? It's fucking lettuce.
Is Anya one of them, like in a Subway, just gets like bread, meat, cheese?
No sauce.
Nope,
Get out the Subway, man.
Oh, no,
Get out the Subway. What are you doing in Subway?
I had a Burger King 2 days ago, and she has to specify,
Take everything off it.
Take everything off it, just the meat and the pop. Maybe she don't like tomato. She'll eat chopped tomatoes like at a passata or something, but she will not eat like sliced tomato as part of a thing. So just to trigger her, I'll go have a salad maybe after this podcast.
She's not veggie.
No, God, no. No, I've been a veggie for 13 years now, but okay, then controversial opinion. I don't like the in-your-face movement, like people who are all holier than thou.
Like the preachy everyone
type,
needs to be veggie. Yeah.
I've been a veggie for many years, but I would never force my views upon anyone. Ideally, I'd love everyone to think
to
the
be
same,
vegetarian,
for moral reasons and stuff, but I make my own choices.
It's not the world we live in, though, is it?
That's not the world we live in. No, we all have different opinions, different values and stuff.
But we've got something to tell you. I'm not sure if you know, Chris. Me and Ryan were vegan.
Were you?
For a bit.
For a year at least.
No, I did vegan for about a month. I was veggie for a year. I did vegan
for about 6 months and then veggie for about a year after that.
How did you manage?
It was just expensive.
It is.
It's so expensive.
Spenny. And I've said we had the stupid genius scales on. I went back because I felt like I was eating loads of processed food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was in the end thinking a chicken breast has got to be better for me. For regardless of the planet, than a veggie burger out of a box. It's got to be better for me. It's got less salt, less processed.
Yep.
And then I was just like, but I don't want to kill animals because I love them. I'm a big animal lover. I have loads of animals at home, and I was just like, in the end, I was like, and then
it's one for me,
too hungry of a man I'm too big of a person.
I tell you what it threw out to me though. I was like, I tried loads of stuff I'd never tried, loved it, and if I had like a personal chef who would cook me,
you would do
vegetarian, like really nice fresh cut meals all the time, I'd be veggie 100%. Because there was so much stuff I'd eat, like chickpeas, lentils, and like
falafel. I can't get enough of falafel.
I do love vegetarian. For like one of my favourite salads is just a simple caprese, man. Just mozzarella and tomato, olive oil, basil. But like I just like killing off a fucking surf and turf as well, you know what I mean?
I get that. Nope, completely get it. Anya's like at lamb, so I remember I was a while ago now, but she was down of a hangover. I know, shock, but she was down of a hangover, and I done her dinner, and I done these lamb. I don't know if they're lamb cutlets, lamb shanks, or whatever. So I done them for just as again. I'm not eating it. It's all right, and same principle. If I ever have a couple of weigh-ins or a couple of kids, I would never be like, right, this is what you're going to eat. This is what I eat. I like, Daddy, I want to go get a Happy Meal. All right, fucking right, son, let's go get you a Happy Meal. You know what I'm saying? You want some check? I don't know. It's just like again, my choices they're my own.
And then if they choose to be like veggie,
I found it dead hard as well to decipher the evidence on it. Like, what is the best for you?
No, I get that. It's actually kind of difficult for me. I have to take supplements every day. Iron supplements are a big one because I don't get enough iron in my diet. Protein as well because there's not a lot of protein.
It's dead hard to get a lot of protein.
It's very hard. So I take protein and iron supplements every day just to make sure that I'm not, collapsing.
Dead.
I died on my moral hill. Literally.
Didn't kill one animal in 13 years, but I killed myself.
When they say you die on your hill, I took that to the fucking extremes.
You know what? Who the fuck's slamming out there?
There must be a beer delivery coming in. But right, so Cheddar Plowmans. So next question is, it's the famous question everyone asks. Dead or alive, you're hosting a dinner party, 3 people, who would you ask?
Dead or alive, 3 people alive, at a dinner party?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one.
You're cooking. You're hosting.
Let's see. One of the first ones would come to mind would probably be someone like. Let me think. See, you get lost. You go down. You
go
get
down
all these different names.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, first off, maybe Stephen Hawking. He'd be an interesting one to have met. Just would love to have met him when he was alive. Just have such a mind.
Just
like
a
that
poke.
there, you know?
Just a poke his brain.
Like,
Just be like, talk at me.
Talk
please.
at me. Like, sure, because I love space. I love astronomy and astrophysics and all that. If I wasn't a historian, I would be doing something to do with space or something like that. It says The Onion as well, by the way. If we ever have a kid, where when you get like a kid, you get them, you tell them what you want them to be something when they grow up. Yeah. We're gonna get our kid to be involved with rockets. We're gonna subtly influence them from a child. Wallpaper rockets everywhere and stuff like that. The wee spinny thing above their crib.
So it's like have people have like Project Mbappe. You just have Project Buzz Aldrin.
Gets to 18, what you want to be? An hairdresser. It just didn't work.
No! Someone else. So we got Stephen Hawking. Maybe one of the ancient philosophers. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. He'd be an interesting one because he's a very sad guy in history. He wrote a famous.
He's sad.
Very sad. You've heard of Stoicism, the Stoic movement.
Yeah.
Stoicism is kind of like very serious, very somber. And Marcus Aurelius is he's considered one of the great emperors. You ever seen the film Gladiator? Yeah. He's played by how do you call him? Your old man, isn't it? Something.
Oh, is he the emperor in Gladiator?
Aye, he's the emperor, the old one. Not Commodus, that's his son. He's the bell end. Was his son in real life as well. But Marcus Aurelius was a famous philosopher emperor, and he wrote a book called The Meditations. And it was actually a private. He wrote it for himself. He didn't write it for people to read. And then we got it after he died. And it's actually really sad. It shows he was clearly very clinically depressed. And he had a very bleak outlook of the world and stuff like that. And I don't know. Part of me would love to meet.
Then, Chris.
What's that? No. Not to me. I'll get him a couple of, get him a couple of poppers, he'd be happy.
Cheer up! We have fucking Stephen Hawking here, and you're fucking sad.
No, more of just like the talk. I don't know. Part of me when I'm thinking about it, it's just like to show him like technological prowess and stuff, and to show that no matter how sad you might think, humanity, the world perseveres, so it will continue on.
Like, look how you were so bleak about what was coming, but actually things didn't end up so.
I think he was also kind of bleak because it seems like he didn't want to be emperor, and he had it sort of foisted upon him to an extent. It was a very heavy burden of responsibility, and right around the time he became emperor, there was a huge series of crises around Rome, including the big plague, which killed his co-emperor Lucius Verus, but also the Germans invaded, Germanic invasions, and I think it was the Marcomanni was the name of the tribe, and he spent the latter part of his entire reign just campaigning. He didn't want to, but he was forced to keep the frontiers secure. But a lot of his meditations were written when he was on campaign and stuff. But he's again, it's reading his words. He comes across as just kind of a, what's the word? Melancholy.
Yeah. He lived his life with a haze of melancholy every day.
That's it. And it's a shame because he seems like he had been a fairly decent fella. He just needed a bit of cheering up, A very smart man as well. But so him and Stephen Hawking, just have him meet Stephen Hawking. He's like literally he's like more machine than human, and he's still positive.
This man is the most intelligent man ever, and he cannot speak.
This man is the most intelligent ever. He's got a disease where it's like a 5-year prognosis, and he's here. He's like 75 and he smiles. Just cheer up, mate.
Okay, so we've got Hawking. What's his name?
Marcus Aurelius.
And then
God. Okay, then I have to go off something that's not like because these men are known for their intelligence and stuff like that.
A lot of people were picking like I won't influence you.
No. A lot of people might think of a celebrity or something, but
Kim K.
Who?
Kim Kardashian. Donald Trump.
You know what? Actually, I was thinking Donald Trump, and the only reason why is just so he could stand beside the next girl and go, just, amazing.
This is the best philosopher I've ever. What's his name? This man right here, the greatest philosopher that's ever been. I was the greatest president. He was the greatest philosopher.
Period.
Stephen Hawking, the greatest scientist ever. It's true. This right here is the greatest dinner table that's ever been.
His tiny wee hands with his big suits, just ruffling like that.
Dr. Chris Cavanagh hosted this dinner party. The best archaeologist there's ever been. No two ways about it. These are all going to be in my future cabinet. Donald Trump. You know what I mean?
Far too much time pretending.
I was saying, Chris, I become obsessed with the 2016 Republican debates.
Oh God!
Like the Conservative debates, because it is just a comedy fest.
It is.
And Donald Trump, no one had we knew of him, and he just people, and all the rest of them were acting dead serious and the governments are spending too much money, blah blah blah. Wrong, totally and factually wrong. You're totally wrong. And then people like Jeb, to Jeb Bush, George Bush's brother.
Jeb Bush,
he spoke and he went, wow, Jeb, you finally woke up. Yeah, sleepy Jeb. Yeah, and have you had some what drugs you had today, Jeb? Wow, Jeb woke up, everybody. And it was just the crowd just laughing. And it's how are you meant to fucking get one up on this fella? You know what I mean? He's just, Donald Trump, that's the maddest saber ever. Stephen Hawking, Aurelius, and Donald Trump, a melancholy philosopher, a crazy narcissist nutcase leader, and one of the most intelligent physicists
people I've ever lived.
I like it. That could be up there. That's one of my favourites. I like it.
That'd be a mad party, and just me sitting in the background.
You giving them tea.
Watching this going.
This is the worst meal I've ever tasted in my life.
No, you know what? I will go with Donald Trump just for a laugh.
Just for the giggles.
To see what
I like it. So the last question that we asked before we move into the main ep is, what's the worst job you've ever had? We've had some
civil service, hands down.
Civil service
job ever worked. I'm not an office worker. I can't stand office politics.
Is that what proper got you, was being in the office and that whole environment?
It's a wee bit more than that. When I was a bit of a school dropout after I'd done my GCSEs, I was just didn't do the best, and I just
fuck this.
I was a bit of a I was an arsehole when I was a teenager, getting into trouble, got into fights all the time, stuff like that there. Then, fuck you, I make the rules, that sort of mentality.
Yeah.
But then I went into full-time work and I joined the civil service, and this is around the time when I've always loved history, I've always loved learning.
Was it still in Northern Ireland?
It's back in Northern Ireland, Belfast. I was working for the Department of the Environment. I'm not going to give away names or where specifically, but I was working as an admin assistant, just processing papers and stuff. I didn't fit in very well. I was the new lad in the office, and first off, I was a dick. As I said, I was pretty much still coming into my teenage sort of mentality, and a lot of people are very serious, couldn't crack jokes, and because I was the new lad, you push the new lad, but if I push back because I had a short temper at the time, and then it would get me in more trouble because I didn't really understand office politics or how the rules worked, and that would just get me in more and more shit. And I got so bad that I actually developed my first epileptic seizure.
Shit!
I don't know. No, I turned out I'd been epileptic, but I just who knew? Until I keeled over and completely battered the shit out of myself.
What was the stress of it bring it out?
I think it was something like that. There was still haven't figured out exactly what caused it. All I know is that I keeled over, and apparently Anya tells me I still have them in my sleep. So
So up until that point, you'd never had
not that I'm aware of. I just keeled over in the middle. I was actually playing the game. I don't know if you're video games. Do you know Fallout 3? I was playing Fallout 3, the bit where you're running to get to the Brotherhood of Steel after the whole Project Purity spoilers. But I just
some fucker watching 2 missions.
Oh no! But I'm looking forward to Starfield, by the way. Can't wait for that to come out, the new one, the Bethesda game. But anyway, I was playing that there, and I've been playing it for years. Lighting, no effects, don't do anything to me. But I just felt really sick all of a sudden. It was a Friday night, just come out of work, and I was feeling really down that day because I'd just been getting a lot
just
of
had a bad day in work.
Just had a bad day. As bad days go, it was really bad, and I just keeled over. I came to, and my ma says, son, you've had a seizure. And then my dad was away with the army at the time, so it was just me, my mum, my brother, and my brother's mate in the house, and I'd managed to rip out some of my fingernails, tear out one of my toenails, and knock out some of my teeth.
How old was you?
Because I fell in between my bed and one of the cupboards with the wooden knobs, and bang, bang. I mean, I can't remember much. It was, how old was I? I was about
18,
20. 20.
Wow. Exact same story. I won't name him because he doesn't want to be mentioned. One of my good mates, when he was 18, never had an epileptic fit in his life, and you usually associate it with. There's a few lads in our school who, when they were younger, and the dad did their whole life, and they were still doing it. And we were in a house party one night when I was 18, all drinking and that, and he felt a bit off, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go, lads." And 10 o'clock, when you're 18, you don't go out till 9, 9:30. You meet it, and we're like, "You all right, lads?" He was like, "I'm just gonna go home, boys. We've only been here for half an hour." Someone come and got him. And then like an hour later, his mum or someone contacted us from his family. It was like, he's had a fit. You know what I mean? And it was just like
mad, innit?
At that age,
so
you just expect that you passed
explain it. There's just something's off. I can't even put it into words. Some people get weird. There's everyone thinks the stereotype you get it from flashing lights. It's not true. Majority of epileptic seizures are not caused by the strobe light.
Some people can have it from.
I know a girl that had it from when she heard a loud bang. Like she'd keel over and have a seizure. I met a girl who had that there, and it's some people get it from stress, some people get it from exhaustion. There's so many different
exhaustion
triggers.
Was his one. The doctor was like, you need 8 hours definitely. If you don't get, and then if he doesn't get a long sleep, the next day he's very like cautious about he's moving and he tries to rest a lot because you know.
Well, you feel like you've run a marathon, so because all your muscles are going like that. So they are, so it's like it's good.
He's in bed for days after it. He was like in bed for the whole day after once he'd done. It's awful, man.
I used to crack. I have a very dark sense of humor, so I always find a way, like cracking jokes.
Make light out of it, yeah.
So when I ever had a seizure, I'd say I'm not having a seizure, I'm having a flash dance and stuff like that, just and
break dance.
But I would
get the
crack
video
jokes.
camera.
I crack jokes to like friends and family. Occasionally, one or two of my friends didn't know I was an epileptic. I cracked these jokes until they got offended, and then I dropped the bombshell afterwards. I'm allowed to. I can say this. I can get away with it. But I don't know. It's a lot more manageable now. I haven't had any grand mals, or at least waking grand mals in a very long time. But Anya says I'm still flopping about occasionally in my sleep at night. And the thing is, I thought they died down for a long time, but until like about, I don't know, a year ago, she was telling me, you're flopping about in your sleep. And I was like, since when? It might have been maybe the stress.
Since when you were lying?
Fuck yeah. It could have been the stress of the PhD, I don't know, but because that was when I was wrapping it up and stuff.
And everything ramps up and it's constant all the time type thing.
I don't know. Again, it's definitely much more manageable than it was at the very start. I remember they put me on certain medication, and it was absolutely it was Tegretol they put me on, and it turned me into a ghoul, like a zombie, sort of nearly drooling at the bloody mouth. So I hated it, never took it again. But other ones they're almost like the same effect that an antidepressant would have, the sort of neurosuppressant sort of thing. Kind of makes you very like
level
zen, apathetic. But anyway, just to come back, this all started around the time I was working this job I absolutely hated. So the worst job I've ever worked in my life. Office job, civil service. We'll never do a job like that again as long as I live.
Fair play. So we'll move into the main beat of the podcast now. So you said, or alluded to earlier, that school dropout, hated it, wasn't really bothered. So how did uni come about then? Like when was the flip round where you went, right, I wasn't really bothered in school. Obviously, you just said you went into the civil service from school. At what point did you go, I'm interested in history, ancient history and stuff like that. When did you go, I'm going to pursue this at university?
I've been interested in history all my life since I was a child. I used to love dinosaurs. Like, what we didn't love dinosaurs. Jurassic Park, fuck yeah. I love dinosaurs, and then from there I progressed to things like ancient Egypt and stuff like that. And I was a real geek when I was in primary school, and then I became a complete arsehole in secondary school. But when I was in primary school, I used to love reading, going to the book fairs. My ma would buy me books and stuff like that there. And I really have to credit my ma and dad, because again, we're from a really, really working class background. Like where I grew up, Sandy Row in Belfast is kind of like, I don't know, is Toxteth in Liverpool? It's a bit of a rougher area. It's kind of like that. And out of my whole school, we had a thing called, I don't know if you have your 11 plus tests. You might not have them here. But these are like assessment tests when you're going into secondary school to see your levels, we
have like SATs.
SATs, we call them 11 plus in Northern Ireland. And I did very well and all that, but history and geography and just learning stuff, I was just really, really good at it. And I've always been good at it, even when I'm in my teenage years. But then again, when I was a teenager, I was more interested in getting girls and just messing around and, the respect of my peers sort of
the
thing.
Whole
and
point
not caring about what man are your future.
Went away.
It happens to a lot of maybe young women as well, but like obviously I don't know how women feel, but I think like a lot of lads, I went to an all-boys school. A lot of lads do all-boys school as well, A lot of lads do change in those years, and you do become obsessed with like what the lads think about you and can't, like who are you seeing, how many girls have you been with, are you drinking yet, have you had these drugs or whatever, and it's just like it becomes very much pressure, and your clothes all stuff that
all over avenues
could be important to you.
But no, when I went in the civil service and I hated the job, but I never forgot my interest in history and stuff. And then it was that point I just remembered, like, what the hell am I doing? And then I started going with a girl at the time who had just went into her first year of university, and she was about a year younger than me. She's a lovely girl, so she is, but watching her do that and seeing her progress was kind of like a wake-up call in my head. I was like, Chris, you do not want to fall behind, you know, you don't want to be like constantly, you know, wishing you could have done this sort of thing. And it was also my mum for many years when I was a kid, had sort of like said, you're going to do great, you're going to do this, that and the other, because, you know, because I was weird compared to a lot of my schoolmates in primary school, because I loved reading, learning and stuff, and I was the teacher's pet and stuff like that, you know. So she's like, you're definitely going to do really well, you're going to go to university, because no one in our family at that time had gone to university. And at that point I just said, you know, fuck it, I'm going to go back. And the thing is, I still remember telling my mum, I'm going to go to a tech, I'm going to do the course. And she went, no, I'm sure. You know, like she didn't really
I don't believe you.
Yeah, I don't believe you, sort of thing. But
did you feel like you'd let it down a little bit?
I did. I was kind of ashamed by that there. Yeah. It's exactly, I felt like I let her down. It's exactly it. But I went in and I wanted to do history. History was all full up. So they only had an option of sociology, philosophy and politics. So I did sociology, philosophy and politics. And philosophy introduced me to the ancient Greek philosophers.
So that's where that kind of love for that came, or developed.
I'd already loved the ancient history, but that introduced me to a different aspect of ancient history, right. The philosophers, like Plato's Republic and stuff like that, and I love reading that. Funny story, it turns out Anya's dad, who when I first met him, he had the exact same teacher as me, he did the exact same course, the same man, and we were both talking. Did he talk about Plato's Republic? And we were absolutely brilliant, so it was. So me and him get on like two peas in a ball, because we happen to have the same philosophy teacher in tech.
What a small world.
It is. But I went to college. I did that, and I did politics, philosophy, sociology, and then I passed and got into university, and I did a bachelor's in ancient history and archaeology. Aced it. I mean, I did very well. I mean, I flew for it. And then I did my master's in Sweden. I moved to Sweden for 2 years.
Sick.
Didn't know that.
Funny story. My best friends are all Swedish. Archaeology guys, you know, I met them all
blondes and gorgeous. The men and women in Sweden just seem to be better looking than
everywhere
else.
It's literally it's women were the reason I went to Sweden, is because at the end of third year I was working.
You know, to it though, they just good look. You know, the men and women, they just good looking. Like you go to a beach on holiday and you go, they're Swedish, like tan skin, blonde hair, and you're just like, the hell, man.
A phone call off your bird in a minute.
Yeah, sorry, Danny.
How do you know?
I was working on the Erasmus program in third year. It's like introducing the foreign students, welcoming them over to my university. And I got on really well with a group, and then there was a group of Swedish women. I got on really well with them, and I struck up a sort of like budding romance with one, and then she told me, because I said I was wanting to go on to do further studies, but in the UK you had to pay a lot of money for a master's. She said, go to Sweden, you get free tuition. Like, what? This is when we're EU? And I was I was like, fuck off. So I ended up moving to Sweden. Lund, I spent 2 years there. I met a woman, and I was with her for about 3 years, and then we went our separate ways, and then I came back home. But I studied there. I learned the language, not that it's very useful, but
isn't like Sweden the only place that speaks that language? Is that
pretty much. It's well, no, the thing is, you understand Swedish, you can kind of understand Norwegian and Danish. They can understand you. To an extent. Swedish, Danish is apologies to any Danish viewers. Danish Swedes like to joke that if you speak Danish, it's like speaking with a potato in your mouth. My friend Axel, he's my best friend. He's half Danish, and he taught me a lot of Swedish, but he has a very strong southern accent. It's called skånska, and let me think of an example. An old-fashioned word for farmer in Sweden is literally a landbreaker, landsbrukare. So I'd say I am a farmer. Jag är en landsbrukare. But if I said it with a skånska dialect, it's jag är en landsbrukare. So you can hear it's got a lump in your throat, right in the back, and for very guttural in a weird way. But it's a fascinating language, and actually that's what sparked my interest in ancient languages and other languages as well, because a lot of the words we use are actually derived from Old Norse and Scandinavian, and the same with Irish, the Irish language.
Is that due to when like the Vikings?
Yeah, the Vikings came over. You've seen the word? I don't know. You don't have many Presbyterian churches here, but have you ever heard of the word kirk? Like a kirk.
No.
In
There's
Scotland,
the
you get
name
that a
Kirk.
lot. The name Kirk,
Yeah.
but Kirk means church. You get it in Northern Ireland, you get it up in Scotland. It's a Presbyterian term usually, but it comes from the Swedish word Kyrka, Kyrka, which is their word for a church, or Kirche in Germany. So you see that word as a clear root, and in Irish, it's kill. So you can see the original root of the Scandinavian loanword.
I technically am Presbyterian.
What is Presbyterian?
I
Sorry.
don't know. Well, the only reason I'm Presbyterian...
Scottish Protestants, essentially.
Oh, right,
the only
okay.
reason I'm Presbyterian is because my dad was married before my mum, and it was the only church that would let him remarry.
Yeah. So your
There's-
dad's Scottish?
No.
No, it's just the Scottish. It's a Scottish-based faith, and a lot of them moved over to Northern Ireland or Ulster. Whereas in England, you've got the main Protestant church, Anglicanism, the Church of England. Now, I've been to an Anglican service, and I had never been to one before because, again, I come from a Protestant background in Northern Ireland. Our services are very simple, very serious. If you've been to a Presbyterian service or a baptism or something, you'd see it.
I probably did when I was younger, but not to the point where I remember.
Church of England, it's just Catholicism. You come in with a big gilded cross. It's peace be upon you and stuff.
Oh, yeah,
this is just Catholicism. What is this?
Yeah.
But because again, it's the.
I'm Roman Catholic.
He's
nothing to me.
No, but even that is there is a definite difference between things like Presbyterianism and Roman Catholicism. Presbyterianism generally, at least from my experience, is much more austere, less beauty or ornateness. Even less colour in a lot of their services and stuff like that as well. It's really fascinating, just the differences in Christian religion, let alone all the ancient religions and stuff like that.
Fascinating.
But I tell you one, especially as a Roman Catholic, if you walk past a nunnery or convent, is there a certain symbol you make or sign you make with your hand?
It's the
cross. The sign of the cross. Now, I know a couple of my friends back home that would make the sign of the cross in front of a religious area. It's sacred to their faith. In ancient Greece, they did the same thing. You walk past the temple, but you blow a kiss. You go. And you blow a kiss that way, and literally, it's interesting. The reason they did this, it's just like a sort of it's called genuflection. You sort of curtsy in front of, you show, how do you say, sort of bow down before the gods. It's showing respect. Alexander the Great demanded they do this to him when he became king of Persia, and the Greeks were like, "Fuck off." When it happened, the term is literally proskinesis, literally pros towards, kineos to kiss towards, and the Greeks, the Persians did it all the time to their king. They would blow a kiss as a sign of respect. And when Alexander became the king of Persia, he's like, right, do that to me. But the Greeks, because the Greeks it's tied within their culture to the gods. You're like, you're not a god, you're a mortal man. Get to fuck.
That's what was interesting.
That's one of the things they weren't having.
Sorry, I'm not clued up loads on Greek mythology or nothing. But that's one of the things that fascinates me about the Greeks is, and I've heard Stephen Fry talk about this a lot because he's got a lot of work on it, is they never pretended to be these perfect people. And
no, the gods were flawed.
The gods were all, whereas the gods in I don't know, the Catholic faith, it's
God,
couldn't do
God
anything wrong.
Do no wrong.
Absolutely
infallible. Yeah.
Whereas the Greek gods were Zeus was a person with loads
of,
he was a bastard, and it was just that's so good how even it just seems more intellectually put together than
one of the best stories in the ancient Greek myth is how the Trojan War started. You know the story of Troy, and the whole thing is, it's called the judgment of Paris, so the contest of Paris. Paris is the fella that took Helen and brought her over to Troy, Helen of Sparta, and then it started the whole thing. Well, there was a party for all the gods. All the gods were in attendance, and one goddess, Eris, was not invited. Now Eris is the goddess of strife and discord. So you don't want to invite discord to a party. It's pretty much the shit stir. She is the shit stir. You do not want to invite the goddess to shit stir.
That's all the reason to get it.
Eris was
not some beef in this party.
Eris was not happy about this. She was pissed, and rightfully so. So what she did, she decided to get revenge, and she made a beautiful golden apple and inscribed on it in Greek, "To the fairest," or "To the most beautiful," and fucked it into the middle of the party. And then that caused a scrap between all the goddesses, because Athena was like, "That's to me." Aphrodite was like, "No, that's to fucking me." I think it was Demeter might have been the other goddess. She's like, "No, that's to fucking me." And then they all had a contest, and then Paris, the mortal man, was invited to judge. So the judgment of Paris is like, which one of these is the most beautiful? And all the goddesses offered him these things. If you judge me as the most beautiful of the goddesses, I'll give you this. And then Aphrodite won him because Aphrodite says, she says to Paris, if you judge me the most beautiful, I'll give you the most beautiful woman in the world. And Paris went, all right, I'll judge you. And then she gave him Helen and made Helen fall in love with him. And then he kidnaps her and takes her to Troy. And that's how the whole fucking Trojan War started. All because of a scrap between, like a jealous goddess.
Can I just say, right, this is the best way I've ever heard history described. She fucked an apple in. She went, that's me. No, get to fuck. That's me. It's the best description of Greek mythology ever.
That's why I feel that's one thing I feel that's really lacking. One of the reasons it makes me very passionate about what I do when I'm teaching. I feel that classics.
It's taught in a classic way.
It's taught in a classic way. There needs to be a more down to earth way to approach it. A way to make it more relatable to
and digestible
modernity.
to a lot of other people.
Like, for example, I teach on Alexander the Great. After he died, the whole Greek world went to shit. It went to hell in a handbasket because everyone wanted to be king. They're all killing each other left, right, and centre. There's murders, assassinations.
Challenges appeared.
It was just like Game of Thrones. Just like Game of Thrones. And then, of course, you even have the White Walkers, the Gauls. The Gauls invade from the north in Macedonia, and they completely put the country, the whole place, to the sword. They devastate Macedonia, get down as far as Delphi in southern Greece before they're beaten back. You ever seen the Bible, the book of Galatia, or the Galatians? Okay, well, there's a book called the Galatians because there's a place in central Turkey today where Ankara is, and the Celts actually migrated there and settled there and became a pain in the arse to all the kingdoms that were in the area until they were sort of brought under control. But
so was that like it was the Ottomans about then around?
Oh no, way before that.
We're
we're talking about 2,200, 300 years ago.
Oh shit!
So the Ottomans were around from the 1300s onwards. So I mean, much later. But definitely this period, the Galatians, they are a Celtic people that came from sort of Central Europe, migrated down as two large waves and completely devastated the Greeks, all while they were fighting like in a Game of Thrones sense. It's just like the White Walkers. So
do you reckon they've got those, like the Game of Thrones have proper been influenced?
Wouldn't be surprised. Your man George R. R. Martin's obviously very well versed in his history. I think he based a lot of it in the Wars of the Roses, but he the English strife between the royal houses, or the cadet houses of the royal family. But either way, they a lot of people who write these really good epics are probably influenced from classical themes as well.
What's amazing, as you say, when you delve into history, you're like just listening to you speak on a very fucking minute part of history. You're not making anything more better than that, are you?
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like when you listen to that and go, "Oh, that happened." Well, I'm not writing anything better than fucking that, am I? So I may as well just rehash it.
There's some incredible things, even locally here. The way the Britons, Britain was invaded by Rome. Julius Caesar landed here in Britain twice. I think it was twice, and then he didn't conquer, but it was Emperor Claudius that eventually invades. And do you know the capital he set up as a capital after he conquered Britain? Colchester. Colchester was the capital of Britain at the time. London.
Colchester.
Colchester. Oh no, it gets better. Do you know there was a legionary base right beside us, just south of us, Chester?
Chester
was the base of the 20th Legion, and every single legion had a nickname, like military units today. Like you got the Black Watch and stuff like that, or the Enniskillen Dragoons to go back in time, or the Scots Guard, Welsh Guards.
I knew Chester had big Roman ties.
But Chester was originally called Deva Victrix, which is literally I think it means the victorious Deva, or the goddess, or the victorious goddess, but I think it means the victorious Deva. Anyway, but the 20th Legion was based there, and its nickname was the Valeria Victrix, which is literally translated as the valorous and victorious 20th Legion. So they all had these nicknames like that. They even had a legion called Rapax, which means the rapists or the predators. They had the Rapax, you had Ferrata, the Ironclad, you had the Fretensis of the Straits, because they crossed the straits of a sea. You also have like Gemina, the twins and stuff like that. And then the 14th Legion, which is very famous because they're the ones that beat Boudica. You've heard of Boudica? Famous. You ever go down to London beside Westminster? There's a big chariot, bronze statue of a woman on a chariot.
I know the statue.
She comes from in East Anglia, and she was the leader of a tribe of Britons called the Iceni, and she was pretty badly treated by the Romans, to put it mildly. She was whipped, and I think her children were either raped or enslaved, or some form. The Romans did something bad to her kids. A whole combination. She rose in revolt, and a huge British army took on the Romans. Romans were hugely outnumbered. Camulodunum, Colchester, was destroyed. London at the time was a small veterans colony, so for retired Roman soldiers, put to the sword, destroyed. And then they marched up towards central England. Legions from Chester, from Wales, from southern England marched. Well, not in southern England actually. I think that legion refused to join. But there was 14,000 men roughly took part in the Roman army. Fought the British, the Britons, at the Battle of Watling Street. You know the road, the Watling Road or Watling Street. Still there today. You still drive along it. But it was a main thoroughway connecting like central England, like a spine from Wales going across. And 14,000 Romans against huge numbers. We don't know how numbers of Britons, and the Romans won. And the 14th Legion, the central unit in that, got the nickname as Emperor Nero was the emperor at the time, and he called them the Martia Victrix, which means the their name was 14th Gemina Martia Victrix, the 14th victorious sons of Mars.
So
Mars is the god of war.
what year is this going on?
Oh, Nero, when was he emperor? Maybe about 40 AD, something around then. Wow. So,
it's fucking mad, isn't it?
Honestly, it's fucking mad how the Romans managed to hold on. And after Boudica was...
And how many Romans was there in the battle?
14,000, something like that there.
Like, what, 100,000 English, did you say?
Yeah, I don't know about 100,000, but definitely hugely outnumbered.
Numbers.
That's the problem when you get like ancient historians who write
about
the battle.
2.
They will scale it up on a magnitude, but there are some amazing battles like Alexander the Great. The battles he fought, he was outnumbered in almost every single battle, and he was an absolute mad cunt. He charged at the head of his men every time. That's why he got injured. I mean, he even got shot with a ballista bolt, which is like a huge arrow, and still had that thing cut out, and he kept fighting.
You know what I think's mad though, and like, I don't mean to sound like proper crude or nothing, but like, and obviously the Romans did awful things, but there's something just like badass, as I said earlier, about just walking in somewhere and going, oh yeah, by the way, this is ours, and we'll kill yous all if you don't let us have it, and we might just kill yous anyway.
That's a mad opinion coming from a Brit.
No, that's what I'm saying. It can come across mad, but like, there's something like respect. It's like very, there's something to respect about it.
No, I
just being that. Like just strong and like, we're going to defeat you.
The concept might makes right. I know what you mean.
Obviously, obviously you got like all like empires and that, and there's atrocities, and I would never say like, oh, I love an empire. You know what I mean? What's your favourite empire? You know what I mean? But like, just from talking from I'm not digging at all, lads. If talking from a historical point of view, I just find like big. Characters from history fascinating.
No, I agree.
Fascinating.
Do you know what I mean? And
something quite
badass about them in a horrible way.
I completely agree. I'm like I've already said I'm a vegetarian. I'm quite a pacifist kind of fella. I'm obviously I abhor war, but there is inherently the fascination of how did they do the things that they did. Like Genghis Khan, one of the most brutal people in history, made the largest land empire.
That's what I mean. Yeah, and it's you can't get your head around it.
Genghis Khan was exiled from his own tribe and was forced to. He was pretty much exiled, condemned to death.
And then he went out.
Still managed to unify the Mongols and then conquer so much.
You've hit the nail on the head, Chris. That's what I admire is the mental fortitude to go like, this doesn't work for me. And then obviously Genghis Khan went on to be an absolute bastard. But like, if you looking from a historical point of view, those tasks you got to do in history, like what was good about Stalin? And you'd have to argue what was good about Stalin, and that's when you get into like, well, he must have been a stoic person. He must have been, whatever you'd say for Genghis Khan, the fortitude to get, outcast and then go, I'm going to come back and fucking just build my own then. And then Nick come back. And it's like, this bastard's back! You know what I mean? And he's going to kill him. And it's like, we thought he was finished. And that's what I appreciate is like, just like strong characters.
There's that's the interesting thing about Rome. Rome's always depicted as this big empire that was like unstoppable. Rome had its balls handed to it so many times. Most of the Roman inventions were actually copied from their opponents that defeated them. So the Roman army, when they first fought, they fought in what's called the phalanx. It's the way the Greeks used to fight. You ever seen 300?
Yeah.
No, it's not really accurate, but you see that shield wall they have, the like row of shields and spear above. Yeah. That's a phalanx. That's it's like a big shield wall with spears above it. That's the way the Romans used to fight. But then they fought a group of people in the mountains, the Apennines, and these people were called the Samnites. And the Samnites used tactics. The Romans were like, what the hell is this? And they got absolutely hammered by them. And the Samnites fought in a more loose formation, and they had swordsmen with larger shields that sort of curved around to protect their bodies. And Romans were like, that's a great idea. So they copied it, perfected it, made it better.
That's where they had, the turtle formations,
the testudo and stuff like that eventually came along. Yes, but this.
Is that what they call it? Because that's what the Latin name for tortoise is.
Yeah, testudo. Testudo. But the
didn't know that.
But the even the sword, the gladius. The gladius is a vicious sword, very small, but it's a sharp point, and it's designed to puncture here or armpit, groin, vital points that will easily make you bleed out. And their sword is actually, it's called the Gladius Hispaniensis. comes from Spain, because they fought Spanish mercenaries fighting the people of Carthage. They're people from North Africa, and they're like, this weapon is vicious, this is an incredible weapon. They took it, improved upon it, perfected it, and made it their standard weapon for much of the high Roman period. So that's the whole thing, was adapt, improvise, overcome.
So you're saying the Romans had their asses handed to them loads, but every time they did, they look for ways to like.
The Battle of Cannae.
How do we've been beat? How do we improve? To
exactly.
Like,
The thing is, Romans were never. One of the most famous periods that's ever happened in Roman history was the Second Punic War. You've heard of Hannibal?
Hannibal
led his elephants across the Alps. That famous guy.
Oh, yeah.
Hannibal was a North African general, and he was probably one of the most smartest strategists up there with Napoleon and the like. Just incredible mind. And he took an army against the Romans. Now the navy, the fleet wasn't strong enough to take on the Roman fleet, so he decided to march overland through hostile tribes through the Alps in winter like a madman. And he came into northern Italy with only like a skeleton force, fought the Romans, beat them when he was outnumbered, fought the Romans,
was he North African?
Trasimene. He was North African, yeah, Hannibal. He started from Spain though, from Cartagena in southern Spain, Carthaginians Nova as it was called at the time, and moved into, well, that's the Roman name for it. Anyway, moved into northern Italy, beat the Romans a couple of times, and then fought the Battle of Cannae. Cannae is probably one of the biggest defeats for the Roman army in its history. It was something like, what was it? I can't remember. It was 8 legions, so that would be 80,000 men, because you had double the amount. 80, well, it could have been 60,000 killed according to historical sources, but Hannibal had 32,000 men against 80,000 Romans, and the Romans were on the playing field, and they had better equipped and better, stronger men. Carthaginians were tired, and his men weren't as well trained. The only thing Hannibal had that was better was his horses, his cavalry, on a playing field, as I said, and he beat them. And how he did it was that he had his front line, he put them in a semicircle sort of formation out towards the Romans, and he put his weakest men in the centre, his Gauls, and then on the flanks he put his Libyans, his best men, and he put his heavy cavalry on the left and right as well. Heavy cavalry beat the Roman cavalry, and then as the Romans came forward, they pushed the line straight, and then an inverse sort of semicircle, so the Romans started getting sucked into this pocket and surrounded them, and then the Romans were so tightly packed they couldn't even move their swords, and then the cavalry came back to close the box, and that's how he won the battle, even though he was outnumbered by the Romans at all times.
I love stuff like that, mate.
Isn't it mad how,
but this is the weirdest thing. Hannibal, after he won the battle, this is the third time the Romans have been absolutely devastated in Italy, in the centre of their empire, you know. And after this point, parts of Italy started to defect. The city of Capua, which was the second biggest in Italy at the time, it's where Naples is today, declared declared its secession from the Roman sort of sphere of influence. And Romans, what they decided to do, they didn't back down. When a messenger came from Carthage, came to Rome to negotiate, talk about things, they told him to be out of the city by sundown or he'd be killed. Because then they even started levying slaves to fight as soldiers.
Yeah.
The Romans decided to fight to the bitter end, and eventually they won the war, and Hannibal eventually was exiled from Carthage and then died in Turkey at some point much later. But the Romans, again, they never backed down after that fight, and that was one of the most fascinating periods of just watching how a society reacts to such a shock.
Such a big defeat.
A big defeat. Like 60,000. Apparently during the war, I can't remember if it's true, they lost 5% of the male population of Rome. 5% were killed. I don't know if it was a battle or a war. But 5% of the population is...
That's
incredible, yeah.
What's fascinating is, like, it's not enough to be a brute, is it?
No, you've got to be smart.
It's not enough to just have more and be stronger. Like, intelligence kills, man. Like, if you
even
can outwit someone.
That's in mythology as well. Mythology, do you know who the god of war is?
Is it Mars? No, it's
Mars
not.
Is the Roman god of war. The Greeks call him Ares.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then, but there's also another goddess of war, Athena, or Minerva, as the Romans call her. But every time they fight, Ares and Athena, who do you think wins?
Does Athena win?
Athena, because she's the strategist. She's the goddess of strategy and warfare. Ares is just pure unchecked aggression. And in Rome, Mars is a bit different. In Roman, Mars is a bit more subtle. Ares is sort of like unchecked violence. Is what he is.
Bloodthirsty violence.
He supposedly made a bed out of the skins of men he killed and stuff like that. That's how brutal he was.
What's the film?
Chaos.
Is it Gladiator or is it Troy or something? There's a film and there's two armies coming together, like the Greeks and the Romans or whatever, and one of the armies has of the time, it must have been big back then, probably only 5'2", but it must have been big, like 6'4", 6'5", something. and he's huge, and he comes out and he's just a big brute.
He's got a big warhammer.
Yeah,
like gladiator.
Because they used to have, like, rather than the armies fight, we'll have two, men fight. And yet the gladiator comes in, he's a smaller bit human, and he obviously outwits the big brute. Yeah. Does he run through his legs or something and just fucking... I don't know. And he ends up defeating him, but it goes to show, just like,
strategy can sometimes...
Yeah, well,
strategy trumps violence.
But it's like that in every walk, like football, like you get the worst team with a better strategy to outdo the more skilled team on paper, and they outwit them with a tactic.
Unless your name's Russia in World War II.
And then or it's just today.
So what they used to do in World War II is you'd have a group of 4 men. You'd give the front one the rifle and the other 3 men ammo, and go, right, all he is run, and when the first fella dies, pick up his rifle. Then hopefully one of you gets to the end with the gun.
Why not give them all guns?
So they didn't have enough. They couldn't manufacture enough guns for the soldiers.
I'd be like, what? I've got fucking ammo.
I'm throwing bullets at people.
Get me the MP40.
So that's when numbers...
Be like that with the gun off. You fucking with that gun.
So that's when numbers can genuinely outpay. Is when you've got millions of people and just swarm.
They call them human wave attacks. Iran did it in the Iran-Iraq war. I think China did it in the Korean War as well against us and the UN forces as well. So it's pretty. It's a
brutal tactic.
But it's very effective.
If you've got enough men to waste.
Yeah. Have you done much? Obviously, your specialism is ancient history. Have you done much on like modern history?
Yeah, I did a lot of trial. I lived in China for a time. I went to Korea.
So did you live in China and Korea after your masters?
Yes.
So is that the time between then and starting?
So after Sweden, I did a lot of traveling when I was in Sweden. Me and my best friend Axel. You remember the Arab Spring? The whole spate of revolutions that happened in the Arab world and all the political violence. Tahrir Square in Egypt. Well, anyway,
me and Ryan are thick to all this stuff.
I am sitting I like a big sponge. I'm like, yes, just tell me.
Well, there was not that long ago, a couple of years ago, there was a load of revolution. That's what led to the Syrian civil war and stuff like that. That's going on. Yeah. Horrible thing. But when we were in Egypt, my friend and I decided to go to Egypt. I came up with this brilliant idea because it was really cheap because all the tourists had run away because there was political instability in the country. So we'll go, it's really cheap, we'll get everything dirt cheap. That's a brilliant idea, let's do it. So we went to Egypt and we were the only white guys in Tahrir Square while there was a protest going on. The next day there were tanks blocking off the square. That was a bit awkward.
What town's this?
Was it 2017, 2018?
No, I was in China in 2017. I'd say 2014 maybe, 2014, 20.
Because I remember there wasn't it like a civil uprising or something?
Yeah, in Egypt that was it. We were in that square. We were literally in the square with there Bryce Nampton. And again, my friend Axel's like 7 foot, so two tall, pasty white guys that stand out like sore thumbs. And my head reflects sunlight, so that doesn't help either. But,
just a glow.
Snipers we went to Egypt and we had an absolutely fantastic time. Apart from the fact we're in a car crash, that's another story. But drivers in Egypt do not give a
crazy.
Drive the wrong way. Our taxi driver drove the wrong way up the road, didn't care, and we collided with a family on a bike. And I was like, oh God, we've killed someone. We hadn't, thankfully. No one was injured. It was just the bike was knocked over.
Just traumatized.
Then our taxi driver literally just went, and then grabbed a bottle of water and got out of the car to go and talk with him. And I'm sitting there with Axel and our friend in the back just going, the fuck just happened? But that was just one of our experiences. I also got into I don't know if I should be saying this in the podcast, but
we can cut it if you don't want it.
I got into a fight with an armed security guard in the Valley of the Kings because I was trying to take pictures. You're not allowed to take pictures.
A full-on fist fight?
No, he tried to grab my phone off me, so I tried to wrestle it back, and we got into a struggle. And his friend came over with his assault rifle and said, "Drop the phone, let go of the phone." And I was like, he's got an assault rifle. I don't think I can win this one. And
why can't you take photos of it in the Valley of the Kings?
No, you're not allowed to, but it's because if you have the flash on, you can damage the paintings. But we obviously, my friend and I, both archaeologists, we're not going to put the flash on. It's silly. But he started threatening us. Like, do you want to go to speak to I can't remember, it was the commissar, the head, the guard or whatever. So we slipped him £20 to fuck off. And once we gave him £20, the phone kept all the pictures. So what we did then is we learned a lesson. You can only go into three tombs in the Valley of the Kings, or 5 if you pay for like an extended ticket. So we went up to every tomb, slipped a £5 into the guard's pocket, and
got a photo.
No problem.
I did that in the Vatican. You're not allowed to get a photo of Michelangelo. And then like I went in with my girlfriends, and I just like in front of everyone went, "Excuse me, there, love." You're not allowed to take photos. I went, "Demi, I'm never coming back. I know no one here. I'm not asked. I'm getting a photo." Got almost like that to my mum. Get on that bit there. It's just like,
as long as the flash is off, it's grand. It's like they had that problem in those like prehistoric caves in Lascaux in France. Too many people coming in taking pictures. The heat was doing damage to the paintings.
What's that place in the world where they created a replica of the cave? With
That's Lascaux. Yeah,
is that
they created the replica of it in France.
So you can go in and see a replica of what the actual cave looks like, and it's like to scale looks identical.
Yeah,
but you can't go in the actual cave because it was getting ruined.
It's getting ruined by too many people.
What, did he build a replica?
Yeah, they built a replica. Oh no, it gets weirder. Abu Simbel in southern Egypt. That's the big. If you ever seen like the mountain, the big thing, the big four men carved into the mountain.
Yeah.
That's Abu Simbel. That is not in its original place. When they're building Aswan Dam in southern Egypt, the dam would have flooded Abu Simbel, so they literally cut it out stone by stone, moved it up the mountain, and
replaced it.
Just moved it. It's the same monument. They literally just moved it up the mountain a bit so that it doesn't get swamped underwater.
Yeah, we're going to take that and move it up 100 feet.
Literally, it's what they did. So they've done that, was it in the 50s, 60s? So,
be gutted if you were like chipping the stone away. I went, I've ruined his nose. I've fucked his eye.
That's one of the most interesting things about Abu Simbel as well, because not only is it historically interesting for the Egyptians, but it's interesting because of all the people that have seen it in history, tourism. Even the ancient Greeks considered this ancient. So there's graffiti from ancient Greek soldiers when they visited.
So that's how long it's been there?
That's how long it's been there. There's graffiti from medieval, the Byzantines, who had written stuff there and stuff like that there, and their names carved across the legs in Greek and stuff like that, and it's absolutely fascinating. The British expedition to in World War II, you had British forces and all, and you get graffiti from the British soldier station there in World War II, and all of that is like, some people are like, graffiti, it's a nuisance, but sometimes at what point does it become art or a historical preserve? Because some of this is really, really fascinating.
Well, of course, yeah, because it's not graffiti if you're going back thousands of years, and it's a way to measure where people were in a certain period of time.
That's another thing they don't tell you much about classics, just how dirty the ancient peoples were. If you go to Pompeii and stuff like that, graffiti's scribbled everywhere. The amount of cocks you see drawn on walls is incredible. One of the best ones I saw was outside they call it the pub. It was a taverna, or like a tavern sort of thing, or taverna shop. Is either tavern or a shop, but anyway, it was called, I think the name of the place at the time was the Temple of the Fawns. That was just the pub's
dicks
name
everywhere.
But no, right outside, written in Latin, as I fucked the barmaid here. So it's absolutely brilliant, you know.
It's mad because you don't think that they speak like that.
Oh fuck, they did. Another one was you haven't seen Venus until you've seen my wife, which is kind of like, you haven't seen, like, I don't know, think of one of the prettiest women in the world, Venus,
till
you seen my wife. And then there was a male prostitute offering oral sex services to women. So because remember, like the idea that a woman is virginal until her hymen is burst in history. So kind of offering oral sex is not going to
do that. Yeah.
And then it's not only that, so he's offering the services, and he says virgins go free first time and stuff like that. So it's really, really.
So that's all just carved on these walls in Pompeii.
Yeah, it's all
so
carved.
There's like trash talk on walls and
scratched on the walls. Like graffiti.
That's
There's
insane.
so much amazing history to graffiti. And one of my favorite ones, the funniest ones I've ever seen, was one of the earliest known evidence we have of Christianity in the Roman world is a piss take. And it's a cross. It shows a cross, and it shows a man with a donkey's head crossed on it, and it says Alexamenos sebete theon, and it's in Rome, and it literally says Alexamenos is honouring his god, and he's taking the piss. He's pretending Jesus is a donkey, and he's got him up on a cross. So it says in Greek, he's honouring his god. This man Alexamenos must have been a Christian, and his mate's like, making fun of his Christian mate. So it's one of the earliest instances we have of Christianity, and it's a fucking piss take.
Stuff like that, mate.
I love stuff like this because, again, they don't cover that a lot in history. But people back then were no different than we are today. Just as funny, crude, sense of humour. I suppose sexually charged.
Maybe they do, but I suppose like a lot of religions, my experience of them is it's all taken very seriously. And they don't want to show the piss take or the light side, or they want it all to be taken. They want themselves to be serious. Don't take the piss. Don't do this. Yeah. So maybe that's why. But
before we get on to kind of what you did about in your PhD and stuff, there's one question I want to ask. I think it's quite funny. Is in your time between masters and PhD, you worked as a historian and a tour guide. Is that true?
Yes, worked in Belfast, doing tours of Belfast to interested members of the public.
was the tours about around Belfast?
Well, a lot of people when they go to Belfast, they go to see the stuff to do with the Troubles, all well and good, or they see the main monuments. I literally was doing Belfast's hidden history. Belfast for a very long time has been a hotbed of rebel violence.
It's never happened before.
You could have seen that, but it goes as far back as the United Irishmen's Rebellion. That was 1798, something around then. But the Society United Irishmen, I think I'm right on that number. Hope so. But the Society United Irishmen were a sort of, the reason they were called United Irishmen is because it was both Protestants and Catholics unified against the what they saw as the perceived exploitations of the English. They're being poorly treated. For example, the Anglican faith, we're talking about religion here, the Church of England is the dominant faith in England, but they tried to impose it over in Ireland, the Church of Ireland it was called. And if you were not a member, a subscribing member of the Church of England, you couldn't go to university, you couldn't join the army as an officer, you couldn't get any form of social advancement whatsoever. This pissed off a lot of people of certain...
It was like social credit in a way.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. So a lot of people at Belfast at the time, majority were Presbyterian or Catholic. There are not many Church of England Anglican members or Church of Ireland Anglican members at all. So obviously, enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of thing. They unified against this. And some of the you've ever heard the term the Emerald Isle?
Yeah.
To refer to Ireland, that comes from the Society United Irishmen. I think it was William Drennan. He was a priest up in Belfast, and he came up with the term, and he was writing about it.
Mad.
So Belfast is a lot of history of this at the time, and then around this time we also had the French Revolution and the American War of Independence.
That was going on in the 17th.
There was a lot of how do you say,
rebellious
anti-English sentiment, and then eventually culminated in a big rebellion.
Because a lot of Irish were in America, and they must have knew about the rebellion going on. They were like,
there's a lot of people that were originally living in America or from Ulster. A lot of them, because they were made to leave. The Puritan movements and stuff all the way to the west. A lot of Presbyterians from Ulster also fled because of the persecution or the lack of advancement they could achieve under English control at the time. And this is what led to the United Irishmen's Rebellion. And the rebellion was ultimately a failure. Wolfe Tone, if you've heard of him, he was one of the ringleaders of the rebellion. But I would show people around the town some of the famous sites, like where McDonald's is now in Belfast. Used to be Belfast Castle, which is the centre of the town. Used to be a Norman Mott and Bailey, and then eventually it was a much more substantial Elizabethan sort of style castle, and it burnt down. And then right beside it, where BHS Stores is today, there was the Central Square, and that's where all the criminals were executed and stuff.
Right.
And a lot of the ringleaders of the rebellion had their heads cut off and put on spikes. And then just across is the courthouse. It's now abandoned. And some of the most interesting events happened in Irish history, all Irish history. Like you hear Irish music in a pub. Yeah. A lot of that music was passed down orally, oral tradition. So not a very good way to record and preserve things for posterity. Yeah. So a couple of the United Irishmen, I think it was Henry Joy McCracken, he was one of the ringleaders who was executed, but he and a few others realised that the Irish music, the Irish folklore, that's in danger of dying out. So he organised what's called the Belfast Harp Festival. Got some of the best musicians from all of Ireland, got them up to this building, still there in Belfast today. Again, it's derelict, it's abandoned. Got them all in there, and they had a wee festival. And they have people there sitting recording the music, writing it down, and that's why a lot of the music's still preserved to us today.
Wow. What year is that, like early 1800s?
It was late 18th century, so it was around then. But it's amazing, the wee things you go by. I didn't even notice until I started doing the tour. But showing people around parts like this, and also the industrial period of Belfast, because Belfast for a time was one of the biggest ports in the world, just right up in the height of the Industrial Revolution, started to decline after the First World War. But that's why things like the Titanic and all were built over there, and then shipped over Liverpool and so on. So there's a lot of history in Belfast beyond just the Troubles. Funnily enough, the Troubles, a lot of the issues from the Troubles go as far back as that. Because after the United Irishmen's Rebellion, the English brought in, the British government brought in what's called the Act of Union with Ireland. The Irish Parliament, the Dáil, was suspended, and it was ruled directly, or its members, I think, all went over to Westminster. But the rules that they were like persecuting for Presbyterians, they were removed. So Presbyterians could now attain office and stuff like that, but they were kept in place for Catholics. Kind of like a divide and conquer sort of thing, like it was done in India, sort of stuff like that.
What the fuck was the problem with us, man?
Well, when you were saying before about how having empires is really cool.
Don't put words in my mouth, lad.
This is.
I said it's cool how the fortitude of individual characters withstood certain pressures and they've been able to rebound like badass.
We just wanted to preserve the British nation essentially, and because we invaded and we had the famine in
famines. Yeah, it was.
We were just wicked to everyone.
Yeah,
no?
because
70 years ago or something like that.
Because we wanted to preserve the British nation, and we used everyone else to do it and be rich and control the world.
Yeah, I get the economic like incentive of the time. Like that's what everyone tries to do back then.
Any group that's seen as potential threats to your way of life, you try to.
But why would they
Russia did it as well. I mean, a lot of for example, even in Ukraine right now, a lot of the soldiers fighting for the Russians are not ethnic people from like Moscow or St. Petersburg. They're sending people from like the Asiatic parts of Russia. They're using them.
But why? Yeah, I'm just naive historical brain, but like I don't get why you perceive why was another religion's way of life on another island. So why did the British see it as such a detriment to them?
Probably because it's the concept of common identity. You've something you have in common with your fella next to you, same cultural thing. Fear of organisation can lead to conflict, and it's better to have an enemy that's broken up, split into like many different groups or trodden down so that they can't propose a threat to you in future. It's the potential.
It's nuts, isn't it? But I suppose that explains like the Irish, or what they perceive to be a threat from Ireland, and that's why they wanted to create.
It's like the plantation. They tried to outbreed the Irish by bringing in.
But why then
stuff like that?
Ireland's a neighbour. Why were they trying to take over like South Africa? It's so far away. What was the threat there?
Resources, colonialism, prestige. Stuff like that. It's all about resources.
It's so fascinating, man. Like, just like what is the reason as to why?
That's why Europe colonized Africa, because Africa's isn't it still one of the biggest places for natural resource in the world?
The Democratic Republic of the Congo has the highest concentration of
coal.
It would be the richest country on earth in terms of net resources if it could monopolize them properly. Unfortunately, it's a very unstable country, but it would be one of the richest countries on earth.
That's a lot.
We talked about that, didn't we?
That's a lot of the reasons you have unstable in Africa is because we colonised a lot of it, and then when we left, we didn't really give much thought about the borders.
Still, but things. Not just that. If you don't care about like the tribal elements and stuff like that, just draw like a
straight line,
arbitrary line. But not only that, it's there's still a lot of Western influence in these countries. Like have you noticed recently with the whole thing going on in West Africa, the whole instability?
With
France still has a lot of influence in there. They still have soldiers there.
That's what I was saying to you before. With France, like that's why.
Lads, you were telling me.
Yes, that's why in Niger, that's why it's all kicking off because like is it the junta? Is that the
junta? Junta. I know what you mean. Yeah.
So they that's why they overthrew it because they were sick of the French influence of the country and how the resource was being, even though it's not a colonial friend, whatever, was still being sent to France. They weren't benefiting.
Let me throw my curveball at you, Chris.
Oh, here we go.
No, it's not my curveball. What's your take then? You said you've been to Egypt. What's your take on the Randall Carlson and what's his name? Randall Carlson, is it? Who does who's like what's the name of his program? The Ancient Apocalypse. What's his name? Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock and
Ancient Alien sort of stuff.
Not Ancient Alien, but that's the I'm not trying to. I think there's aliens out there. But I'm not trying to claim that they've built the pyramids. They go into that stuff. But what about the claims that the pyramids are older than what they actually are? Like, as someone who doesn't have a background in this stuff, I can't decipher what's actually meaningful and what's not. And they've come out recently, and there's been a lot of publicity around, like, Joe Rogan podcast put them on, and other podcasts like Lex Fridman's had them on, and big scientist Andrew Huberman. And the claims that the pyramids are actually older than they are. And then places like that, what's that called, like Göbekli Tepe in like Turkey and that, which is super old. And what we originally thought was like the earliest civilizations is actually. What's your take? I don't know.
Okay, well, first off, like you ask me, my friends we generally would roll our eyes, but
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
But at the same time, now you have to be careful because just because it sounds fantastical doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong. I have to be open to the idea. They could have a point. If there's evidence that comes out down the line shows, holy shit, these guys were right. take my hat off to you. If you asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you to fuck off. It's silly. Yeah. I'm just being more
open.
Open. But like when it comes to things, like I've heard like theories like, oh, it's all a precursor Atlantean civilization. I'm just like, has anyone ever told you Atlantis was a mythical creation created by, I think it was Plato in one of his dialogues? And then people were like, nobody based it on a real thing. I was like, well, why did he create it as a fictitious state? But anyway. Also, if it was a precursor, how do you explain things like certain crops that only grow in like the New World, like tomatoes and corn?
Yeah.
And they didn't have potatoes, and they only existed when we brought them over here.
Yeah.
If it was a precursor civilization, we would have had them here already.
Yeah.
Also, the ethnic variations between us. There are some models already that explain why. Like for example, North American people from the Americas, North and South, have Asian features because they crossed the Bering Strait, that bit between Russia and Alaska, thousands and thousands of years ago. One thing I feel, now I honestly keep my mind open to it. Now I'm just being honest right now. I am open to the idea, and if more evidence comes out in support of it, brilliant. Now we know more. This is great. Well done, guys. You've been vindicated. But at the same time, I feel that one problem we have in history is we always underestimate human ingenuity. So the pyramids themselves, a lot of people looked at it going, how could they build something that big? Because they had a lot of time and they were very smart. So look at us today. We rely so much overwhelmingly on technology. We take a lot of it for granted. Even like the microphone I'm talking to you, if the technology that went into making this thing is incredible, but that's only through hundreds and hundreds of years of development.
Standing on the shoulders of giants type thing.
But even back then, it's just like, how could they lift something so big? Because they use ingenuity. They figure out ways to get around it. That's one thing humans we have. We're very, very creative.
But do we not know the exact ingenuity they use?
They do. With, for example, the large stones, they floated them up on barges on the Nile, and then you put logs under them, and then they help them move, almost like a primitive wheel.
But how'd you get them
can help them that way. Sorry?
How'd you get them up?
Ramps and pulleys.
Build ramps and pulleys. Yeah. And you have a lot of people. That's one thing. Another misconception is a lot of people think the pyramids were built by slaves. No, weren't built by slaves. No. Built by paid workers. And it's one of the earliest evidence we have in history of a strike in the world was held by the workers building in Egypt because they weren't paid and they downed their tools until they were paid.
Why do certain people? Because I've not like I've seen the Randy Carlson stuff. I think that's his name, and Graham Hancock. I just don't know. I don't know what was the evidence they were using to validate their arguments.
It's probably
and like the rope books. What are the books called?
Reaching on things they've seen.
Something it's like.
Is it completely disregarded? Sorry, Chris, by the archaeology world that like that what they're saying is absolute nonsense?
Well, I can't speak for everyone, but at least I know my few archaeology buddies would just be like, either they roll the eyes or just say, I try not to think about it, sort of thing, because it's just like, whatever. It's controversial, to say the least.
In the area,
But I keep my mind open. I mean, for all we know, we could have visitors. I'm sure you've heard about this whole David Grush thing going on with the UFO stuff at the minute. They could have visitors coming like next week telling us, we built that. Cheers for letting us know, But that's it.
Here's the selfie I took at the top.
That's another man's one, isn't it? The way there's like pyramids all over the planet.
Oh, yeah, it's also it might also.
Why was everyone building them that didn't speak to each other? That's crazy.
Because the concept isn't it points to God and
go up to the heavens.
Yeah.
And height indicates status because it's big. You can see it for far around, and it's also practical because you get building a tower. You might not have the technological know-how to build a tower that's stable enough, so you build it very wide at the base. That makes it easy. You can actually see the development in Egypt. They're called mastabas. They're just like
little things,
buildings, and then they start building the step pyramid, and then they build a triangular one. Then there's the Dashur pyramid I've been to, where they didn't do it right, and they built it like this, and then it goes like that.
Isn't there loads of pyramids in near Cairo?
Oh yeah. No,
we only think there's 3, don't think there's hundreds in there.
I stood at Cairo. I was at the Red Pyramid, and you look to your left, and there's about 6 pyramids in the distance. You look to your right, and there's about 4 that way.
You never see them,
do you? They keep going as far as and they're all on the west bank of the Nile, because that's associated with the sunsets, with the dead associated with them. So on the east bank, there's nothing. On the west bank is where all the pyramids are.
Are they all tombs?
Yes, every single pyramid is generally built as a tomb for someone or other.
And some of them are like piles of rubble and sand now.
Oh yeah, they've all collapsed in the piles of rubble and sand.
It just looks like brick.
It's mad.
It's like a building site gone wrong. But it's a tomb, and it's like
Everton.
I went into one, so I did, and it was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. That time I was in Egypt, you crawl down the passage,
Yeah.
and it's a very, very long climb down. It's very claustrophobic, and I was like, fuck this. When I went about like 2 seconds in, I tried to turn out, my mate Axel's arse was just in my way, so I couldn't get past it. It was too narrow, so I was forced.
Get the fuck out of the way, Axel.
So I was forced to just go down, and then we had this
not for me,
but when you finally get down to the bottom, it was incredible. But I actually got a wee bit hypoxic, just like
I can imagine, yeah,
because there's not enough oxygen down there. So you're like, right, let's get the fuck out quickly. But it was amazing to get down. But once you get down, you're like, right, and back out to go.
Yeah,
so,
just a weird feeling.
It is, it is very, very uncomfortable. I've still got my backpack back home, and it's got the scratch marks from the ceiling of the tomb on my my backpack. So I mean, it's very, very small. You have to crawl down to get through it, and you're going down that way. So it's really, this feels weird. But there is a photo. It used to be my researcher profile photo for a long time, and it's me sort of like in the tomb passageway. And you can't see I'm where I've got my sunglasses on, but I've got a face of pure terror. It's like, Jesus.
I hate tight spaces.
Proper panic me.
Yeah, they're not nice.
Like, when people say you've got like phobias and stuff, like like I'm scared of spiders, but I'm not a phobia of them. Tight spaces, right? I proper fucking like lose my mind. I'm like, whoa, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Like, what came up on my TikTok when I like first got it? Is it what's it called? And is it splunking?
Spelunking, the cave crawling,
where literally they'll go through spaces in the rocks climbing, and it's that tight.
Oh, like the videos and the video on the face.
Superman, and it's like, so it's that tight. They have to go one arm through and like shuffle through with the.
What do they do if they get stuck?
You die.
There's a famous story. It's either in Canada. This is very off piece.
Nutty Putty Cave, I know of it.
There's a famous. Is it Canada?
Yeah, I've something like that. See, Canada or America, but I know one of Nutty Putty Cave, and a lot of people I think have died on it.
This family found a cave either on the farm or near where they were. At the cave, yeah. So the family went in to try and fucking excavate it, but they're not cavers or anything. So they went in and it started getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And there was a particular point where it dropped straight down and to carry on.
Yeah.
So the fella who was at the front, one of the older brothers, was like, "Yeah, I'll go for it." Dropped down, but because he'd never been in the cave before, got stuck upside down like this, and they couldn't get him out, and eventually he died because all the pressure went to his head. He was stuck in there. He was stuck in the cave upside down for like 24 hours.
Oh, lad. Fucking hell, the death he's went through.
And like mountaineer, like, mountain rescue went in to try and get him out, couldn't get him out because of the way he'd fell, because it was like a ledge, he just fell down and like couldn't get back out.
Imagine just facing darkness.
He's still in there,
yeah, because they can't get him out. He's stuck.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at someone's death.
No, but yes. So now they have like signs outside all the cave. That was very off piece, but interesting story. So we'll move on then. So we've talked about undergrad, masters, research in between, speaking around the world, and a lot of very interesting history. But now,
never met someone who's so like,
oh my god, this is amazing,
a fountain of knowledge, lad, on the topic.
And then
spoke to professors and they're like, sorry.
What's amazing?
I already see you have someone like a couple of weeks later going, he's talking bollocks. So
loads of archaeologists are gonna get onto us. That's wrong. That's wrong. No, I mean like your recall of dates and stuff.
That's wild.
We wouldn't recall tiny stuff about our
really
research
poor with
like
dates,
that.
but I remember the sequence of events pretty well.
So like, if you kind of know where the start was, you can kind of figure.
Yeah, no, I always just, I don't know, when I was reading, I'm very good at making an image in my head and make it come to life. And like every time I'm talking to you about like even Alexander the Great, an image forms in my mind of what's going on, and that's how I sort of retell it. I don't know, I've got a memory like a sponge in that regard.
That's so sick.
Like a fucking
so I suppose that then helped you with your PhD, which we'll get onto now. So what was your so obviously how many years out was it? 4 or 5 years? PhD.
Before I started my PhD, I said I did a lot of traveled around the world and all that, and then I came home and I tried getting on PhD. I got in. When did I start my PhD?
Was it always on the cards to do a PhD, or did it just
to be honest, I was the first one in my family again to go to university, and working class background and all that there, and I figured, fuck it, why not? I never thought I would in a million years, but
after the travelling, you'd come back and you were kind of like,
I wanted to at that point. I did want to, but I was just more about how do I do it, because again, no one in my family, no one I knew had really done it. So how the hell where do you even start? Well, turns you have to make your own proposal and stuff like that there.
Well, I was quite, me and you were quite lucky in that regard, weren't we? Because you applied for a project that was already
it's different in this thing in STEM. It's like different.
Yeah, so I I applied for funding of a project that was already written, and you applied for one that already had funding, didn't you?
Yeah.
But obviously, because luckily I never had to go through that process, because I'd have found that quite daunting.
It's exhausting. I'll tell you one thing though. Your proposal, if you both get on, good luck by the way, guys. If you do get on the PhD, your thesis is going to look wildly different from what you think it's going to be.
Oh, mine changed day one.
Yeah, I can't even remember what my proposal was now, but I remember it was on the Galilei, but it changed so much, and then it became some sort of comparative analysis between the Galilei and all these different groups that have existed in history. So it was like completely different from what I'd set out to do. Ended up becoming more of an anthropologist than a classical historian.
So what was your PhD on then in the end?
Okay, so I mentioned earlier about the Galilei, the people that castrated themselves.
Yeah.
What I then mentioned is after they do this, they dress up like women and they act that way for the rest of their lives. And the ancient Roman writers hated them because what kind of man castrates himself? They had really toxic concepts of what it means to be a man. In my personal opinion, which I'm planning to write a paper on at some point. Don't steal it.
We can cut that if you don't want.
Sorry. I feel that a lot of our values in the West, our approaches towards homosexuality and trans individuals, stems from the Romans.
Okay.
Because of course we come from Roman culture. A lot of our values, our language, well, half German, but our language, even our behavioral traits and our customs. Christianity, of course, is very Roman influenced. So the same values from their views of people who did not adhere to what's expected of a man and what's expected of a woman, and their hatred of anything that sort of deviates from that might explain our cultural, distaste for individuals who do not adhere to that. And that's why I wanted to look at the Galilei, and there's a lot of things in the archaeological record that we don't understand about them. We've got like tombstones from some of them, or inscriptions, and they're interesting, but we also the only evidence we have about like why did they do what they did comes from ancient writers who hated them. It's like the equivalent of
very biased,
like Westboro Baptist Church doing a history of LGBT peoples, and it's the only source we have 200 years. It's you're not getting the proper view.
Or the KKK being the only history on
Black rights movements,
or the Nazis and the Jews, like the only Jewish information you get from Nazis.
It's the so I went into it and I was like, how can we understand them better? Because I come from an archaeological background. I have a more hands-on approach, as in I don't just look at the text. I looked at the artifacts, and I put probably more stress on the artifacts than I did as much the text. But I've also started to look at other groups around the world, because there are other groups around the world through history. Not talking about people from here, the West, like modern trans individuals. I tried to avoid the West because I didn't want Western bias or influence, because remember I mentioned earlier I have a hypothesis on our Western cultures being influenced from Rome. I wanted to look at cultures that were not linked to us at all through history. I found a few. I found one group in India, one group in the Pacific and North America. And I looked at these groups. The groups in India are called the Hijra. They still exist today. They still castrate themselves in honor of a mother goddess. They worship their own goddess called Bahukara Mata, and they do so many things that are so similar to what the Galilei did in history. There is a genuine there's a genuine debate as to whether they were directly linked at one point, because remember Alexander the Great got all the way at the India, so who's saying culture didn't spread
so
all
it's
the way
that
down.
Similar. It's kind of like
that similar.
This would be weird if they got there on their own.
They worship they both worship a mother goddess. They both castrate themselves. They both beg, ritual begging. They both dress as women, and they perform like ecstatic dances, like elaborate dances in honor of their deities. And there's also a day of mourning in India called Kuvagam, where you mourn, I think his name was Arvan, you mourn like this hero in Indian folklore who died young, and they all get together and have a big gurn or a big cry. And the Galilei did the exact same thing on the, I think it was the Hilaria? The festival, or the Atidea, the festival of Attis, this immortal youth who castrates himself for Cybele, dies, and then they all got together and had a big cry over him. So it was either the Atidea or the Hilaria festival. It was one of, it was one
a lot
of those
coincidences
there.
Many
coincidences.
Yeah.
I'm planning to maybe do a paper on that at some point down the line. But these priests, again, we didn't understand enough about them, it was my argument. So I wanted to look at these other groups, see what similarities these groups had with the Galilei, and if they have any particular traits that we might be able to look at and apply it to the archaeological record. It turned out it actually did work, because some of the archaeological things we noticed, like found evidence, for example, of a homosexual marriage, which in the ancient Roman world is near unthinkable. You know, homosexuality was okay as long as you were the dominant partner, and that's the way the Romans handled homosexuality, well, between men and women.
What do you mean?
So in ancient Rome, if I'd asked you, are you gay or straight, they wouldn't understand, because there was no such concept. You could have sex with any man or woman you wanted, but as long as you were the dominant. So if you were giving it rather than taking it.
Oh, right. Oh, sorry, yeah.
So
if you would
forgive my innocent mind.
If you took it, you were the effeminate, you were the
looked down upon type
down
thing.
upon.
So wild, isn't it?
And if you were given it, some of the most militant, Emperor Trajan, one of the greatest military emperors, was unknown. Emperor Hadrian, the fellow who built the wall, was unknown homosexual and stuff like that. There.
That's the same culture in like prisons and that.
No, I understand it. I find it really interesting. It's almost like a primal thing. It's like an act of dominance over another person.
Yeah.
In ancient Rome, their concepts of approaches to sexuality were really, really weird, but they're very similar to us in some ways as well. But one thing I found interesting was that if a woman tries to get on like this, no, can't have a woman doing that. A woman is strictly second class. She does as she's told. She is passive at all times. Any woman that dares assert herself in Roman literature is either described as a whore, a monster, this, that, and the other. If you ever look at like some famous femme fatales in ancient Roman or Greek literature, you have like Circe or Medea, or even real women like Agrippina, Nero's mum. Ancient writers accused her of having sex with her son. She didn't, but because she was a powerful woman and she stood up for herself, she's a whore, she's everything. Or Claudius's wife, Messalina, she was accused of having sex with the entire court because she dared conspire against her husband because she stood up for herself. She had her own. Cleopatra, one of the best examples ever. She was a woman who is one of the main things you see about her on TV. She's always seen as sexy or like a seductress.
Yeah.
But the reality was because she was a powerful, smart woman. She's a very intelligent woman. She's probably one of the only ancient monarchs of Egypt, the Greek monarchs of Egypt, who could speak the native Egyptian language, and she spoke many different languages. And the Romans couldn't handle this. They're like, who is this? Who is this harlot who dares talk to me as if I'm an equal? It's like she's a woman that knew her own worth. And the ancient Roman writers, because remember who the Roman writers were, all elite men, like the most toxic Tories. It's like the equivalent of Jacob Rees-Moggs, like fucking they're all like
just an army of Rees-Moggs,
and they despised anyone that dare get on like this. And that's why you see it in history. That's why women were so despised in ancient Roman writings. And the good woman is a woman that sits down and does as she's told, according to these Roman writers. It's disgusting when you look at it from a modern viewpoint.
Isn't it mad, Chris, how like that was so long ago, and obviously lots of things have progressed in the world, but then like it's still happening. Like it's still like, and obviously recently.
That's why I think it's the exact same thing with the trans movement. The difficulties trans individuals are facing today with not being accepted by a lot of mainstream society.
I've just recently watched a documentary on the BBC about Sinead O'Connor, the musician who's just died. I'm a massive music fan, and all the things you've just said that the Romans were calling women who thought, who were intelligent at the time and who stood beyond what was the supposed post, but she
rose above her station, so to speak.
There was the same things being said in like in a modern way, like she's crazy, she's a nutcase, and then now all the same, all everyone looks back at her and go, how amazing was she?
Yeah.
And it's weird how like we're still doing that to individuals.
Again, I think it's still relics of Roman culture. That's
such a mad connection.
That's why I looked at these other groups that weren't Western at all, like North America before colonialism, India before that, and then in the Pacific, they all have these arguably trans individuals, people who did not adhere to the expectations of what was a typical man at the time or a woman, and there's so many similarities between them, like the Hijra in India, as already mentioned, the Mahu in the Polynesia and stuff like that. They're men who would behave in a female manner and do women's work and stuff like that. And then the Berdash in North America, who would do the same thing, and then even some of the Berdash, they had male genitals, but they referred to them as like vagina and clitoris and stuff. And they when they were having intimate relations with their male partner, if they got an erection, they were really embarrassed and angry because it's a reminder of their manhood, so to speak. So it's all really fascinating. You can see you're picking up all this time and you're watching it. And then some of them, the Berdash, for example, died out well, they have a modern equivalent called the Two-Spirit, but that's a different story. But the Berdash, like one of the last ones we have was a fella called Woman Jim. Probably shouldn't call him fella, but this individual called Woman Jim, and they were interviewed in the 1800s, and they were asked, why do you do what you do? They're like, I don't know, it's just what I am, I was born this way. It's funny, it's exactly
the same argument, isn't it?
Why do you do what you do? I am born this way, I can't explain it, it's just what I am. That's perfectly fine. I mean, but it's interesting.
But it's still the same questions, isn't it?
It's the exact same answers as well, and I think it's more of they are what they are. The society hasn't really adapted to fit that. But the funny thing is, a lot of these things, these groups, when I say society, I mean Western society, but a lot of these groups were accepted within their communities until the Westerners come along. Colonialism and the Berdash, when we colonized the States,
shit.
They were persecuted. When we get to India, the British deliberately stripped the Hijra of their ancestral begging rights and privileges they were given under the Mughals, and pressured for example, the Padishah of Awara, which is one of the British sort of dependencies or vassals, I can't remember which one it was, but they pressured them to strip the Hijra of their rights, and even claimed they were molesting children and stuff like that, and went in to break their
So what evidence do we have, Chris, that they were accepted?
Well, the fact is, for example, in
cultures?
Berdash, they had distinctive rights roles within the tribe. For example, the crew boats, they all have different names. Berdash is kind of a inaccurate term, but it's like a catch-all for all these different groups. They all had different tribal names depending on what tribe they were in. But for example, the Nadle of the Navajo, who was it again? No, the Lakota Winkta, I think, did the scalp dance. Wasn't it? No, the Cheyenne Himana did the scalp dance, and they with the scalp dance, which is sort of like a thing, the scalps of the warriors, they would bless the scalps, and they believed, because they're stored up virility, because they would bless the soldiers in more fighting, and some of them had the power to curse. Other ones gave children a blessing when they were born to give them long life and a secret name, just like the Hijra do today in India, because they go along and they perform at a new wedding to give the family long, happy life and many children, or the firstborn child, and they do a dance to give the child long life and virility as well. Same thing. Mad. Very interesting. They all have similar roles, but they all have found a place for them in society. In Tahiti, the Mahu, that's where they were first encountered. William Bligh, the fella from the HMS Bounty, the famous Bounty mutiny, he's the one who encounters them, and he says they were kept solely by the chiefs. So the implication is they're among the high caste of society in Tahiti at the time, and they had a distinct role there, but they always have a place for them in all these societies until the Westerners come along, and then they're persecuted and they're despised.
So
particularly by Christian missionaries, particularly the Christians.
What's the evidence then, Chris, for if because that all makes sense, and it's such an interesting pathway. Or there's obviously a lot of.
I'm not doing it justice the way I'm communicating.
You are, you are. There's a lot of homophobia, transphobia that exists today. Yes. We all know the language that goes on around it, the debates that go on around it, and we've linked that back to the Romans, and they felt the same way. We know that other cultures, had opinions on them, but they weren't so. Looked down upon the average in society.
That's exactly it.
Has there been any analysis? You're saying that the literature that existed on these cultures from the Romans were biased because they were written by Romans that had they looked down upon these people. Is there any been like any psychological analysis as to why, if that's where it was inseminated or could have been inseminated, is there any understanding as to why they were thinking that way and why they have almost spread the virus of hatred? In that literature, was there any indication why are these thinking this way? Why are they looking down upon these people? Is it just because they were different, as simple as that?
It's a really good question, but it's most likely because they were different. This concept of Romanitas, what makes a Roman man a man, is toxic, and it's beyond our concepts of toxic. For example, you have long hair, and even I have a shaved head. These are barbaric customs. Even a beard, which is funny, because a beard for a long time was a big no-no in Roman culture, up until Emperor Hadrian. Then a beard became very much in fashion. So everyone had a beard then. But long hair is seen as effeminate, oriental, Eastern. That's something, or barbarian, Gallic, primitive, stuff like that. They're uncivilized, as they would say.
Not groomed type thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they had even the clothes you wore. I remember reading a Roman man who wore like a thin garb, or like almost like gauze, and his name is Creticus. And I think it was Marshall writing about him, and he calls Creticus literally a Canadus, which controversial term is the ancient Latin term for effeminate male, but the feminine male is not the accurate term. The literal is the F term. It is a more accurate way to to convey what is
So
actually
it was not just them saying this is an effeminate man. This is like a hatred.
This is an F word.
This is a slur. We hate these people.
This is a slur. I don't know if he called Creticus that, but I remember this term is used around to refer to effeminate males, and even like a man that wears particular clothing is referred to in this way, and it's like you're beyond the pale. You're beneath contempt, sort of thing.
So so you said men with no hair were also looked down upon?
Anyone that didn't adhere to these, there'd be bald men, of course, but I mean, like a man like shaves his head in, like would very likely probably be looked down upon. Like even in
so, what would you meant to have?
You grow if you're bald, you have a wee bit of hair on the side. But like even in the Victorian period, remember, men that shaved their heads were seen as prison convicts and stuff like that. There, so you shave your head, even shaving the head has only come into fashion in the past 30 years. Really?
I seen something. No, it's mad that you said the beard thing. I seen something that said that in the last like 100 years, there's not been a leader in the UK or America with a beard because it's seen as sneaky and it's seen as like not groomed. And then I started thinking, I was like, Donald Trump, Obama, Bush, Bush, Clinton, Ronald Reagan, and I was like,
no, I can't think of anywhere beard. No,
gonna go back to like Abraham Lincoln to have a beard, and I was like, mad. You know what I mean?
It's funny. Margaret Thatcher had a phobia of beards.
So you're gonna say she had a beard then?
The irony. No, she had a thing called pogonophobia. Pogon is Greek for beard. Pogonophobia. So she had a real fear of anyone with beards. She despised them.
Yeah.
So no one in her cabinet, I think. No
the fear of Scousers as well.
Beard.
She had a fear of anyone of less than.
She had a fear of Scousers, more just a hatred of Scousers. You know. But no, I was saying about the Creticus and stuff like that earlier.
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's okay. The anyone who did not adhere to this concept of what's expected of a Roman man. So Creticus is this individual who I think it was the writer Martial, but he says that he wore like gauzy clothing, like sort of shimmery, see-through stuff, and he's like, oh, he's clearly an F word. I don't know if he called him out, but he did imply it. He made fun of him for it. And then there's also Julius Caesar, for example, was accused of having homosexual relations with the king of Bithynia. It's sort of like modern-day Turkey, or a part of modern-day Turkey. But the thing is, the scandal, he was accused of being the bottom one. Ooh. And this caused a lot of scandal, like in Rome. But it's obviously his opponents trying to, his political opponents trying to belittle him, to weaken his power, exactly. But even that, you're just like, why is that a problem? But it's an example of the
what their cultural
This sounds really mad as well. I don't mean to be crude, but was a woman on top looked down upon then? Did the man always have to be on top to be dominant?
I actually haven't looked much into that, to be honest.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's sort of the same thing, isn't it? Like
a woman who's sexually active was disgusting. A woman who was passive and all things, because the concept of the woman is to pretty much take it kind of mentality. That's why
type thing.
It's like but a woman who was assertive in any shape or form
was looked down.
That's what I'm saying. So being on top is a bit more assertive.
Not necessarily, because funny thing is, in Pompeii, there's a brothel in Pompeii, and it's well preserved, and above the door to each room is a graphic depiction of the sexual acts that people will perform, lovemaking scenes, to try and entice you when you're going in. And there are some scenes of a woman like doing reverse cowgirl and stuff like that there.
Yeah.
So there's
not on bottom, basically.
No, but there are a few. There's like doggy style and stuff like that. There's all different sexual positions. But it seems pretty, pragmatic. But the thing is, we must remember, a lot of these writers who are really disgustingly tough elites, they don't speak for the majority of living people. Unfortunately, their voices are lost because they were the common people. Most people couldn't read or write at the time, although graffiti might imply otherwise. A lot of people couldn't read or write, or they didn't write so that their writings were recorded for history. But a lot of people, in my personal opinion, it's the same with the Galliae. Like the Galliae was showing hatred from ancient Roman writers, the elites. But the common people must not have a problem because they existed in Rome. They still have tombstones to them, so they clearly have people going, I'll make your tombstone for you.
So there wasn't like a mad societal revolt around.
No,
this
they wouldn't have been able to exist if that was the case.
Yeah.
They clearly were tolerated. Tolerated is probably the best word to say. They were accepted to an extent, but the ancient Roman writers, the elites, they hated them in many ways, because that's another thing we common sense, in antiquity, they had common sense then as we do now. Like a lot of things, like even like how do you the one thing I just wrote a paper on there recently was there was a law passed by Emperor Domitian that a Roman citizen couldn't castrate himself. So everyone assumed, well, that means the Galliae couldn't have been Roman citizens because there was a law against it. Then I thought to myself, how many times, Chris, do you know someone who's broken the law? He's like, you can't do that. Fucking watch me. You know, we all know someone who's broken the law, or that people break the law every day. There's pragmatism is king here.
Ryan hasn't paid for parking outside for months.
That's you.
The same goes for the Galli, and there's a lot of evidence to show that many of the Galli were actually Roman citizens, because they're always displayed. Funny enough, another parallel with today, you see a lot of these like movements or like trans, or they're not one of us, you know, they're outsiders sort of thing. And in Native American societies today, a lot of these people who are two-spirit, like homosexual Native Americans, people who interviewed them in modern society say, oh, they're not one of us. There's no such thing as gay people. That's a Western fad sort of thing. You know, Native Americans aren't gay, which is bollocks, you know. But the thing is, it ties from this, you literally other another group that doesn't adhere to what you expect of your own society. You other them, they're outsiders. The ancient Romans did the same thing, and that's my theory with the Galli. The Galli are always called Phrygian. Phrygian is a place in Turkey, so they're not Roman, they're not Italian. They are Phrygian. Yet there's evidence in archaeological inscriptions they have what's called the Tria Nomina. They have three names, and only two groups in Roman society have three names: Roman citizens and people who were freed from slavery, and they usually took the name of their former master. But the thing is, a lot of these tombstones doesn't say I am a freedman. The Latin word for freedman is libertus, that's where you get liberty from. But they don't say I'm a freedman, and that's fairly common. A lot of tombstones, someone who was freed,
would say that.
So the implication is they've got three names.
Because they're Romans.
And then finally, one thing to really cap it off was a thing called the Edict of Caracalla. Caracalla was a Roman emperor, and in about, it was 212 AD, something around then, he made a law that made every single member of the Roman Empire Roman citizens. Every single person was made a Roman citizen. So
by default.
So how can the Galli all be foreign unless he's importing them from Russia or something? You know what I mean? Or unless they're importing them from Russia? No, they clearly had to have had Roman citizens. Sense. So that's an example of how, oh my God, well, it's the law says, and then people haven't questioned it. I'm like, yeah, well, come on.
There's other evidence than that.
Laws can like fall out of date. You know, there's medieval laws still in you know, Great Britain today that haven't been repealed, and they're probably silly. And like
what is it? You can't carry a salmon suspiciously around the streets of London.
Or in London, you have the right of way if you've got a flock of geese or something like that. There, you know, it's just like what? But some of these old laws that people have completely forgotten about, or are overlooked. Like in the American Army recently, there was the "don't say gay" thing. You know, because with homosexuality in the army, it's sort of like a "don't ask, don't tell." And I think the similar pragmatism would have been seen with the ancient Galli.
Right. Well, I would love to sit and chat here all day. All day, I really could. It's so interesting. But
sorry, folks, by the way, for the
don't apologise. This has been such an interesting episode. Very, very, very much appreciated.
Sorry, Anya. I think Chris has been my favourite guest up to now. Most interesting guest.
I would find it hard to argue with that.
You better pick Anya just in case.
Yeah, Anya, you're my favourite. But before we finish, before we let you go, I know we've run on a bit. We have two more questions we like to ask.
Sure.
That we like to finish on every episode. And the first one, as all the listeners will be aware, is Sam's favourite question. Famous question.
I feel like Chris is going to be deep now.
This is going to be good. This is going to be good.
Right, Chris.
Go on.
Tomorrow's coming, and you're about to die.
Sorry, mate.
You've been diagnosed with a terrible problem. And I come in and say, Chris, unfortunately, you're about to die. The great maker comes down, whoever that is, and says, Chris, I'm going to grant you one wish. What is the thing that you want to know that you currently don't know that would make that good night a little bit sweeter? What is the one thing that's played in your mind your whole life that you have no idea what it is, you don't know the answer to it, and
someone will give it you now. They'll go, there you go, Chris.
I'll provide it. We've had some stupid ones on this, like
we've had some deep ones, like we've had some very deep ones, and we've had some funny ones, like
well, my first thought was a silly answer. Like if the maker came down, my only question would be, where the fuck have you been all my life?
I'm here now, Chris. I'm here now.
Yeah, I suppose it'd be something like that. If the maker came down, I'm just like, what the hell is this? Maybe, what's this all about?
Like, what is the true meaning of all
of
this?
No, I mean, because I'm fascinated in space, I'm very aware of how small we are as a tiny little. We're a little. I always used to use this euphemism when I was trying to explain to like my younger brothers when we were growing up. You know, if you're out in the back garden, you're digging, and a wee worm sticks its head up. Can you imagine how fucking head melted it is right now to be like, what the hell is this? You know? But do you think that worm has any concept of the human that's dug it up, the why we've dug it up, the meaning of its little plot of land that is for our back garden, the planes in the sky, the wars between nations, the telescopes we have?
There's no idea.
Just like we have no idea of what's going on there. So I always see that as something to be humble about. Not some people are afraid of it. I see it as a humble, and we'll keep learning, and it's amazing to keep learning. But if something like that came down to say, okay, I've got one day to live, I'd probably ask for something like, show me a bit more, you know, maybe a question like, I want to know a bit more, like what's beyond the concept of a supercluster, or like you know, the great galactic voids we have between
is it
galaxies.
Right what we're proposing is to is this
like
right? Have we got it right? Is this what's happening?
Or are we on the right path? Because
yeah.
I think there's so many. We're still going to discover the new forces of nature. We're going to discover it's going to completely throw, like Einstein when he came up with the theory of relativity, completely threw our concept. We still can't reconcile quantum physics with Newtonian physics. We're just like, are we on the right path, or have we got it all wrong from the start? But I would ask, again, joking aside, I actually would ask if the maker came down and be like, where the fuck have you been all my life? Why don't you make yourself known, give people hope? But I would just ask maybe just a wee bit more knowledge, you know. What's it all about to an extent? Or as we'd say back in Belfast, what's the crack with us, mate? Something like
maybe
that.
think of the Blossom song. If you think this is real life.
Tell you what, the funny one is, because obviously a lot of the people answer go, is there anything after this? And then we had the funny conversation. We were laughing on air once when someone said it. We were like, would you really want the answer to that when you're about to go? Because imagine if the answer's no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Molly. She went, what happens after you die? Do you go somewhere, or is nothing happens? And he went, why the fuck would you want to know that? Yeah, nothing happens, and you're just going, no. These last 2 hours are going to be horrible.
No, it's all over.
Shit died peacefully in her
yeah.
It's like that mad question. If there's the proposal, I'm going to drag this podcast on for another minute. If there's a proposal that, like, if nothing does happen after we die, and like we were all going to die, like, would it just ensue anarchy? Because like, we've got nothing to lose anyway. We're all going the same. Well, nothing. But like, does that like whole thing, like religion keeps people good because they think they're going somewhere? I suppose
it's that whole collective thing of, well, people like to live in when it's comfortable, and anarchy's not comfortable, is it?
Maybe.
I suppose there's that whole natural progression as well. Because isn't atheism the biggest religion, or not, like, in the UK now? Isn't like that the biggest in the last census?
That's why I say I'm an agnostic, because again, I'm just a tiny little speck. What can I know? You know. But someone asks me, like, do you believe in God? I would just say, what do you mean by God? That's the philosopher talking, you know. Yeah. Because
what is God?
Because there's the Christian God, then there's the Islamic God. These are monotheistic. Then you get polytheistic gods, and then you have to define what is God itself. You know, could God just be the planet itself?
It's a ridiculous question within its own question.
But on top of that, I would say that one thing I like that keeps my head about this whole thing sort of screwed on is I've always been here in some shape or form. I'm literally nothing but, at least at its core level, at the very, very base level, you're nothing but a collection of matter. But that matter, that energy, whatever it is that made that matter, it's there. It's all it is,
and it can't go away.
It's always been there. It can't go away because principle of conservation energy can't be destroyed. So no matter what, you're still going to be here in some shape or form.
I like it.
You might not be, this, hello.
I'll be a tree.
You'll be, but it's still whatever made you is not going anywhere. You've always been here, and you'll always be here, and that's just my way.
It's quite a nice thought, that, isn't it?
But whether it's God or not, but that's it.
I like it. That's quite a nice peaceful thought, especially for I'm someone who tends to not believe in God or there. So that's a nice comforting thought. But the last question to end on. So we ask the question, and then we kind of sneak a bit one underneath it. This is a bit, if nothing jumps to mind, what is your favourite song of all time? And then the question underneath is kind of, well, if you can't think of that, what's like one that's stuck in your head at the minute?
I can tell you one stuck in my head. I listen to so much music. I'm a bit of I used to have hair longer than yourself once upon a time, so still play the guitar and all that. But right now, you ever heard the band Ghost?
Yeah.
Ghost Square Hammer.
With the mask
stuck,
and that.
yeah. It was one of the best gigs I've ever been to in Dublin. But the song Square Hammer by Ghost is stuck in my head right now, and I can't get it out.
It's a good song. Have you listened to Ghost Belly?
No, I've never listened to it.
Yeah, you must have seen that song on TikTok. They got big a few months ago. They've been going for years. What's it called? Holy Mary.
Mary on a Cross.
Mary on a Cross. Like, all the kids.
I'll give it a listen.
All the kids at TikTok that lad were using a little tiny snippet of it.
So, what's your favourite song of all time, or is it not coming?
They're not coming. It'll change. I'm particularly fond of Pink Floyd and stuff like that.
Yeah,
when I was out in China, for example, because I would commute to work, and there's so many people, you're bunged in, like sardines all crammed in, and we're all just looking the one direction. And the song, Welcome to the Machine.
Oh, lad, why was I going to sing that then? When he said Pink Floyd, I was about to burst out and go, "Welcome, my son." You see onto it?
No.
Yeah. Lad, the scariest song ever. And then the video is all like machinery and there's this big thing moving, lad. It's just like,
it felt like that. I felt like I was just like another cog in a machine just going. You felt like a drone almost, because just so many people were all doing the same thing, and it was just like,
go to school. That's
very loud synthesizer.
Like church, like, lads. When we're packing
I'll have
away,
to
I'll
give him a
put it
listen.
on.
Nice one, man.
Oh no, brilliant.
So thank you, Chris, very much for coming on. It's been such an interesting episode.
Thank you very much.
Everyone, if you liked it,
thank you for having me,
make sure
guys.
you like it. Comment, let us know. If you didn't like it, we've got a dislike button. But cheers for watching anyway. I don't think we've got any guests actually booked in the next coming episode. So the next episode we put out might just be us two.
Yeah, I think we planned it to be me and you, didn't we?
Yeah, little catch up what we've been up to, what's going on. But until then, we'll see you in the next one, and peace.
Peace out, people.